generational differences. We're seeing that more obvious nowadays, right? From Gen Zs to millennials. Maybe we'll start with Zach. What are you seeing the trend differences between these two major groups? What are things they're kind of looking for? What are things they're interested in terms of experiences and exploration?
So Gen Z and millennials specifically, right?
Exactly.
So we just did a global piece of research with EY, my organization, Young China Group, partnered with them on this. 10 countries, 10,000. Actually, so young millennials and older Gen Z, so ages 18 through 34, US, China, India, probably a little bit more Asia exposure. That's proportionate with the population. So we're not, but 10 countries around the world. It was really interesting. I go back to our formative years. So I mentioned before that I remember going to internet bars and looking up on forums. Nobody who's a Gen Z will remember that. That is not an experience when they're traveling the world. Their internet bar is in their back pocket or front pocket or purse, wherever they keep it. So I actually think there's a reasonable analogy between the platforms that we grew up using during our formative years and the way that we look to experience the world. So millennials is the Instagram generation. We're not even going to talk about the Facebook generation. That's my grandfather. Sorry, Facebook. The Instagram generation started out with pictures. So it evolved to video, but it really started out with pictures. And I do think that the way that you see millennials traveling the world, it does fall a little bit more into the bucket list category. So Instagrammable destinations, being able to sort of show it off as currency in your community. There definitely are a large amount of experiential, deep travelers, but it often is, the picture as an analogy for the way that you experience a place. And if you look at Gen Z, they are the TikTok generation, depending on who you ask, but I think most people would agree there. That's far more about videos. It's about storytelling. It's about niching down as well, exploring things that other people haven't had the opportunity to see. And so Gen Z, you're seeing being far more experience driven and really explicitly looking to get off the beaten track. I think this piece is also a product of them being sort of a second gen social media using traveler. I'll give you an example. And we're going to go back to Japan. Japan is one of the most popular millennial and Gen Z destinations around the world, Eastern and Western travelers. By the way, for Westerners, it's often their first experience of Asia. So the things that they're looking to do, very different than a traveler who's based in Asia or brought up in Asia. But like if you're using RedNote or Xiaohongshu and you find a really cool coffee shop that everyone's saying is wonderful and it looks really down to earth, and the picture that they got is, wow, like I really want to experience that in the same way that they do. And then you go to that shop, there's going to be a 45-minute wait of other people who have seen the exact same thing, wanting to experience the same latte and have the same organic experience. But by virtue of everyone going there, you change the place, particularly in a place like Japan where places are small, personal, mom and pop. And so I think in like the second or third wave of Gen Z social media users, there's a bit of an allergy to places that are overexposed, to places that are too Instagrammable, to places that are too, in millennials, because millennials, we like to shake our fist at boomers, right? The whole okay boomer thing. But we're now having the Gen Z fist being shaken at us for being too moment driven or hotspot driven or, trying to capture that moment that everyone else has. So I think one of the most interesting parts of Gen Z, and I do also wonder how much of it is life stage driven. Right. So there's generation and there's life stage. We're going to be the same generation for our entire lives. We move out of life stages. Gen Z also have the time to do slow travel. They can be backpackers, whereas millennials, we now wear blazers. So I do wonder how much of it is just they have the time to explore in a way that we can't anymore at this life stage. But growing up with social media as intuitive, growing up with video as being a necessary extension of who you are, and growing up in the second or third space of the digital world, right? There's really interesting data about the amount of identity formation that actually happens online versus in person for Gen Z. The exploration and the digital experience are grafted to one another. in a way that I think is still more novel for millennials. And we're not video native. We're not even social media native in the same way that the younger generation is.
Are you following some of their movement? Or is
Oh yeah.
the reverse trend here rather than you being the trendsetter?
Oh, totally. And by the way, I took a shot at Facebook before, but truthfully, I used Facebook growing up. And there did become a point where the person who was sending me the most Facebook links and videos on Facebook was my, at the time, 100-year-old grandfather. This is a true story. So he became a more native to that platform than me. And this is not just to dump on Facebook. But I think we underappreciate the degree to which generations influence each other.
Mm.
There is this instinct to sort of create your generational tribe. Like, you and I were so different. We're born in a different era. We have different formative experiences. American boomers in particular, American millennials love to blame boomers for housing prices and the plight that we have to figure out. But I think we underestimate the degree to which we've inherited things from past generations and learned things from the younger ones. I think a lot of my favorite travel influencers who I follow are Gen Z, in part because of the life stage that they're in. And it's just energizing for me to see a type of travel that isn't just one business city to the next, which is sort of my life now. It's also interesting to see how they do new things and how they approach the world differently, how they try different styles, how their palette is more open, how they're more global intuitively. So this piece of research that I mentioned at the beginning, one of the major findings was what we call convergence, right? This is arguably the very first global generation in the world. Full stop. If you look back to all of the formative experiences around the world, the generational boxes typically stopped at the border, right? Even the Gen Z, millennial, Gen X, boomer, greatest generation nomenclature, that's American and Western European nomenclature. If you try to take those generational divides and stick them on a place like China or really anywhere in Asia, it breaks down. We actually really advise people not to use these global generational boxes for anywhere but a Western population. What's interesting is after 1990, you could argue 96, but really 1990, you start to see more of a convergence around the world where the likes, dislikes, attitudes, worldviews are more in conjunction. And again, that's because the internet is a shared space for a lot of this generation. Even though someone in China or Indonesia or Australia is not seeing the exact same things as somebody in California, where I'm from, but there's more convergence than there ever has been before. And so the worldview has more in common than it ever has in the past. It's an exciting moment. But last disclaimer here, we also can't fall into the trap of Gen Z everywhere around the world are all the same. That's also wrong, even though it's tempting.
So, well, for LinkedIn, are you guys seeing that convergence that Zach's talking about? Or are you seeing generational differences?
So what are we seeing? We're seeing and very global view, obviously with the 1.2 billion members, a lot of understanding of those members. And some of the areas that we're seeing at the moment, especially in what we're talking about, is there is definitely a shift. So we now know that about 70% of B2B decision makers, and this is in business, are either Gen Z or millennium. So 18 to 44 primarily. So 70% of B2B decision makers globally now fall in between the ages of 18 to 44. So there is a generational shift around that. So often people's perception of who they should be targeting, engaging with to drive business outcomes is different to the reality there. We also do know that that's what you were talking about then. There is an absolute shift to how to engage often these decision makers as well. And a lot of the key ways of doing that, especially in marketing, is through creativity. Very, very important, no matter what industry you're in. B2B often gets pigeonholed into be a little bit drier, white papers, but we know that creativity is key for engaging decision makers in these areas as well. Very important. Thought leadership. So how are you going to inspire me? How are you going to give me insights? How are you going to make me think about subjects and topics? How are you going to drive credibility and impact for your business through thought leadership content? Really important for today's decision makers, very important. And what format are you going to deliver it in? And that format is almost exclusively video. Video is the format, the way to talk to decision makers globally, especially that 18 to 44, with engagement around those areas. It is vital. So when we look at that shift, the decision makers now, B2B space as well around the globe, it is 70% Gen Z, millennials, creativity led, very much through thought leadership and impact, and then video driven.
Wow. So in a trip.com context, are you seeing that generational differences in terms how are you serving those populations in your business?
I think this question I almost being asked a lot. When you're working with most of the destination partners, they want to know what happens in the market, where's the new travel behavior, travel trends for the younger generation. I can put it this way, like in general wise, we can say now the younger generation, they are more willing to enjoy and treasure what they have right now. They don't want to really worry about something will never happen now, but in the future. So I do have I do have a lot of friends around me like saying that why you just if you worry about too much about the future, just like you're using a credit card to spend something in the future negative now, why you need to do that? So now younger generation, like, they really want to spend the times and enjoy the life, existing life. So if you reflected on the travel trends and travel behavior for the younger generation right now, is that they will travel. Sometimes they will travel without plan or without well planned. So just very small motivation, a small element can trigger their travel motivations. Taking example like if next week I realize there will be a Taylor Swift Coldplay concerts.
I was gonna say Taylor Swift.
Okay, I just went there. So after the concerts, what should I do? Let's put it aside first. Let's get the tickets. Once I get the tickets, then I'll think about it. What should I do for the next few days? And I mean, even some of the younger generation that out of a sudden they will just realize that I just wanted to get away from what I'm here right now. I just want to spend few days vacation without any reason. I just feel like I want to go for vacation. No plan or no very detailed plan. I just pop up the idea, like say I want to go for the island for a weekend for 3 days. To book a tickets, then I start to plan what should I do. Or even without doing anything, just stay at a resort, enjoy the beach. That is my vacation. So it's create a lot of challenge for the company like Trip.com OTAs because we realize you look at the overall statistics, the booking leading time getting shorter and shorter. Sometimes we're being surprised, like for airline ticket booking leading time for a long haul destination only about like a week or 7 days. People will just like book the hotel 1 day advance before the departures. It's crazy. Of course, I mean, thanks for a lot of tools like AI, social media platform, technology innovations, make a lot of easier for the data research booking experience. But in general wise, like the younger generation, really their decision making time is getting very shorter. And also, even during the journey, we are also realized quite interesting that back to like 10 or 15 years ago, my mom's generation, they will plan everything for their journey, starting from morning 7 a.m. to night 9 p.m.
Sure.
They will wake up every morning, going for different attraction, different spots, and come back. I think you're not traveling. It looks like you go for another kind of work. But nowadays the younger generation, like even they go for long haul vacation or whatever short haul vacation, they wake up still at 11 a.m. Go for brunch, just hang out for 1 or 2 attractions, come back, relax. At the night they go out for a bar for nightlife, they're not really particular. I need to go for landmark attraction. I must be there to prove I've been in this destination. Not necessary.
Not a checklist. You're trying to go.
The checklist is being different. Sometimes, like for previous, you need to have a checklist. It's all landmark buildings, landmark attraction. But now checklists become: I go to this bar, I went for this coffee shop, I go for this night market. So it's totally different. So it creates a lot of challenge for platform like us. Not only, I mean, like in terms of the point of interest coverage, in terms of content coverage, you need to really think about it. What is the younger generation they're looking at? Yeah.
And Zach, I want to kind of hit you on this particular question about what Edison mentioned, this impulsive, spontaneous decision making,
Yeah.
where people just think, oh yeah, let's just go to Tokyo this afternoon or this coming weekend for a concert. Is that what you're seeing also in your study?
Absolutely. I would. So my follow up question for you would be how regional it is. Like we see and so an interesting follow up question to that would be how much is the region informed by the generation? So background. In a place like China, which is the largest outbound tourism market in the world, 2/3 of passport holders are under the age of 45. So it's very youth driven, much more so than a place like the U.S., where even though it's millennials and Gen Z who make trends, it's still boomers and Gen X who move the market. It's where the money is, right? And so travel is very well reflected in that. And so the data that we've also seen is that in Asia versus North America and Western Europe, in North America and Western Europe, people will plan far further in advance, and in Asia in particular, less. But now I'm, through a generational lens, wondering how much of that is generational. So I used to live in a city called Chengdu. Chengdu is a very the phrase that we would have was 今朝有酒,今朝醉. It means today we have booze, so today we'll get drunk. It's like an ancient way of saying YOLO. You only live once. Part of that, by the way, comes from, and this again, going back to this global study we've done, this generation, both of these generations have grown up with historic uncertainty and pace of change. And when you have historic uncertainty and pace of change, you believe that the future isn't promised, and why not enjoy yourself now? That, when we talk about this convergence, we have really seen around the world. We don't like to talk about the big C word with COVID, but it created historic uncertainty. It also created the first global generational formative event in history. Really, even the 2008 financial crisis didn't hit everywhere in the world the same. Some places were more exposed, some places were less exposed, some places weren't at all. Americans, we forget about that. COVID was global, and there was so much upheaval. By the way, so this trend of enjoy yourself now was a trend beforehand. It was heavily accelerated during COVID. The future isn't promised. Employers might cut us, right? There was historic job upheaval in the job market during COVID. We might have loyalty to our company. Are they going to have loyalty to us? Why not go to Hawaii? Why not go to the Taylor Swift concert in Singapore? What do we have to lose? You really do only live once. So in short, absolutely. I think it does get a little bit interesting about when you look at it region by region.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's now the trend is let's travel when we can. You cannot predict tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's
Nature's not
actually
promising.
driving.
Yeah.